Hello and welcome to this lab demonstration on monitoring storage performance. At the beginning of this lab, we already need to be familiar with the concept of virtual disks and data stores and ES6 top utility. In this lab, we will prepare our environment to run storage performance tests. Then we will measure different continuous activity to a virtual disk on a local and remote data stores, as for sequential write, sequential read, random write, and random read. And finally, we are going to analyze the test results. I'm sure I provided you enough good reasons to watch the following video on monitoring storage performance. So let's get started. At first, we need to prepare our environment for our future tests. For doing that, we need to go to our menu, Hosts and Clusters. We need to locate our Linux 01 VM, which we are going to use for our tests. If this virtual machine is powered off, we need to power it on. Currently, my Linux 01 VM is powered on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to launch its web console. I'm already logged in. So what we're gonna do next, we need to launch a preparation storage configuration script, which can be launched by typing /storageconfig.sh and press enter. Now we need to wait for a few minutes for this preparation to actually finish. I'm gonna pause this video for a few minutes and I will return to you as long as this preparation has finished. So, a few moments later, our script is completed. So now we are going to proceed with our tests. To prepare for those, we need to go to our multi-putty application. We need to connect to our SA ESXi 04 ESXi host. We need to launch our ES6 top utility. Let's call it ES6 top. Now we are going to set the default refresh interval from 5 to 10 seconds. For doing that, we need to press the S button and to type 10 for 10 seconds for us to be able to see the refreshed information every 10 seconds. What we are going to do next, we are going back to our Linux VM. Now we need to go to a pre-configured directory which is called AO stress. And here we can see a set of tests which we are going to run during this lab. We are going to begin with the first of our tests, which is a continuous sequential write activity to a virtual disk on a remote data store. If we return to our vSphere client, and if we right-click on our Linux 01 VM and choose Edit Settings, we can see that our virtual machine has 3 virtual disks, hard disk 1, 2, and 3. And our hard disk number 2 is located on a pre-configured data store, which is called 11 gigabytes local, where the local in our current situation means for us that this data store is local relative to our ESXi 04 host, where this VM is located. So we are going to use this data store as the local data store. And let's unwrap our hard disk number 3. And let's see that our hard disk number 3 is located on a 11 gigabytes remote data store. Again, this is just a name for us to show us that this data store is going to be used as a remote data store. So let's go back to our Linux console and let's run our first test. Let's type /logwrite.sh. and let's run it. So now our virtual machine is continuously generating some sequential write activity to a virtual disk on a remote data store. Let's go back to our ESXtop utility. Let's type the letter U to see that one of our remote devices has a non-zero activity with commands, reads, and writes. Currently we can see that the reads activity is almost zero, and our writes activity achieves some level of operations per second. This number verifies from 200 to 300. Let's wait for a couple of seconds. The largest value that I have seen was somewhere near 290 writes per second. Let's change the display information by typing the V letter to the VM information. Now we can see that our Linux 01 VM produces some write operations and read operations. The read operations is quite low, is significantly lower than our writes operations, as we expect for the sequential write activity. So let's type the D letter to see that this activity uses the VM HBA65, which in our environment stands for the iSCSI software initiator adapter of our SA ESXi 04. So let's go back to our VM information by typing V, and let's record the statistics for our reads per second, reads operations per second, and write operation per second. I'm gonna write this information in my prepared text document. So for our continuous sequential write activity to a virtual disk on a remote data store, my reads per second is 0. Just a second. And my write activity, let's watch for results for a couple of seconds. Now it's 378 writes per second. Now it's even larger, at least twice as large. 787, almost 88. More than 800, almost 900 operations per second. So let's wait for a couple of refreshes. 780. Let's see if our 860 was the largest number. Seems like it was. Just one refresh more. 797. So let me type somewhere near 800 of writes per second for our continuous sequential write activity. Now, let's go back to our Linux console. Let's stop this test by pressing Ctrl+C combination. And now we are going to proceed with our next task. Now we are going to measure a continuous random write activity to a virtual disk on a remote data store. Our previous test was about continuous sequential write activity. Now we are going to measure a continuous random write activity. For doing that, we need to launch a different script, which is called, let me type it, /datawrite.sh. Let's enable it. Let's wait for a bit. Let's go back to our ESXtop output. Again, by typing D, let's verify that our VMHBA65 is still in use. So our iSCSI software initiator adapter, by using which our SAE6i04 is connected to a remote data store, is in use right now. We see that other adapters do not produce as much read and write activity as our VMHBA65 right now. Let's go to U section, which shows us that some remote device again has some network activity on commands, on writes per seconds, and some level of reads. Currently we are using the write activity, so we expect to see some read activity, but not as much as our writes per second operations. And now let's type V to monitor the set of results of our Linux 01 VM. Let's wait a bit for the statistics to refresh. Let's wait for a couple of refreshes. So the first number was more than 1,100 of operations, of writes, I should say. Again, 1,000, 1,000 and almost 100. And one refresh more. 700. Okay. Let me see the next number. I expect to see somewhere near 1,000. Now it's 600. Now it's again somewhere almost 1,000 of writes per second. And now it's more than 1,000. So because of that 600 value, let me wait a bit. And again 1,000. So, okay. I think that this value is our next near stable value of operations per second, of writes per second. So let's record those values for our second test, continuous random write activity to a virtual disk. So let's type for reads activity, it's almost 0. And for our writes activity, it's more than 1,000 right now. So let me type, on average, it's 1,000. Or 1050. Let me type so. And now we are going to proceed with our next test. This will be for continuous random read activity to a virtual disk on a remote data store. So let's go back to our Linux VM. Let's stop the data write script by pressing Ctrl+C. And now I'm going to launch my third script, which is gonna be /file server number 2.sh. So let's return to our ESX top output. Again, let's type D to monitor the active device which our host is using currently to interact with that data store. Again, we see the general level of reads and writes operations, mostly reads right now, for the VMHBA65 adapter. Again, it's our iSCSI software adapter on this ESXi host to interact with the remote data store. So let's go to our U section And again, let's wait a bit for us to see that the same remote device is used as the object of our general activity. Our read operations are directed to this particular remote device. Again, we can see that now the most level of operations is about to be the read operation, and writes are significantly lower, almost zero. The most of our operations are the read operation. And let's go to our VM section by typing V. Again, let's wait a bit to see the results. Let's wait for a couple of refreshes. Now we can see the level of almost 800 of reads per second. Again, the same, almost 800. I'm gonna round this value to 800 of operations per second. For good numbers. Okay, so let's not do it. Let's type that reads operations are 780 on average, and our write operations are near zero. Now we see that there was one write per second, but I'm gonna to type on average. It is almost zero. And let's proceed with our final test, which is going to be a continuous random read activity. Again, random read activity, but now it's gonna be on our virtual disk on a local data store. So for doing that, let's return to our Linux console. Let's stop the file server 2.sh script. And now let's launch our another script, which is pre-configured to use the local virtual disk, which is located on our local data store. I'm gonna launch the file server number 1 sh script. Let's wait a bit for it to warm up. Now let's go back to our ESX top output. Let's type D to see the device which is used for this activity. Now we can see that our VM HBA adapter is no longer in use. Its statistics is almost zero. It's significantly lower than during our previous tests. It's not exactly zero, but it's near zero in compare with our previous results. But now we can see that our VM HBA 0 adapter is in use. The most of our operations, commands, reads and writes are going through this VM HBA adapter. So it's a local bus for this ESXi host to be able to interact with our local data store in this particular test. So let's switch to our use section. Let's see that currently we do not see any activity on our previous remote storage device. And now we can see that currently we are interacting with a different device, which stands for VMHBA0C0T1L0, and the most level of commands are currently generated to this particular object. Now, let's go to our VM section and let's wait for a couple of refreshes right now. What I'm gonna do right now, I'm going to pause this video for a few minutes for us to see some possible changes in that statistics. What I expect to see, that our file server 1 sh script, let me verify that we have launched this particular script. Now we can see I have seen the high level of writes operations, but we have launched the read operation script. So that was because that script was preparing the environment. It was in a stage of creating a big file that this script is going to read right now. What do we see right now is that our read activity is significantly higher than our write activity. And during our previous measures, in this particular case, we have seen some write activity. So let's type those values. For our read activity, I'm gonna type something on average like 7,600 operations per second. And for our writes activity, I'm gonna type, let me see a couple of refreshes. 7 and 5, 3 and 3. Zero. Let me type on average, I see one write per second. So what we can see here, as we expected, we see the significant amount of either writes or read operations per second according to our write or read activity. And we also can see that our local data store has again a significantly larger amount of read operations per second in compare with, for example, random read activity to a virtual disk on a remote data store. What this can say to us? We may expect that our local data store is located on a physically more valuable storage for random read activity. For example, if we see such an enormous difference in level of activity, this can be caused by, for example, some limitations on our remote storage device, or this can be caused by the physical nature of physical disks where our data stores are located. For example, our local data store can be located on an SSD storage, and our remote data store can use an HDD storage, for example. So here we can see the 10 times more operations, read operations per second for our local data store case in compare with our remote data store case. So our lab is completed. Congratulations, you have completed the Monitoring Storage Performance Lab demonstration video. During this lab, we have prepared our environment to perform storage tests. Then we have generated some storage tests to a virtual disk on a VM, like sequential write, sequential read, random write, and random read. And finally, we have analyzed the test results. Thank you for watching this lab demonstration video. I hope the knowledge acquired here will help you with your daily job assignments, and good luck as you continue your journey in VMware world.